Hey, I'm John Tabler. Welcome back. You know, this channel is about fermentation, sourdough, health, and clean eating. And you know, after you already have your sourdough made, you like to eat some other things once in a while. And today, I'm going to show you how to make the easiest chicken soup in the world, the best chicken soup in the world. It's incredible. And I'm actually going to show you the easy way and the easier way. The easier way is if you already have your chicken broth made. But if you don't have chicken broth made, I'm going to show you how to do that very first. And then the extra, amazing part of this soup is the second part. Once your chicken broth's made, your basic chicken soup's made, it will make it the most delicious chicken soup you've ever had, and I guarantee you probably haven't had this one before. So the first thing I'm going to show you is if you don't have chicken stock or chicken soup already made, I'm going to show you how to make it really quickly and very simply. It maybe not as quick as it is simple, because you need to have a chicken. And you know, I buy a natural chicken. I go to the store, and you really want to have a chicken that eats what they're supposed to eat and not have any pesticides in the grains or anything like that. But you know, if you get chicken, your body with sourdough and probiotics has ways of cleansing itself. I just try to buy the best chicken I can. And so that's what this is. And then what we want to do is cut it. You can turn it and put so the backbone's up, and be very careful with the knife and just cut to one side of the backbone. Be very careful again. Once you get that cut, you can just keep going right down to the breast. Now, you really don't have to cut it. Really, what we're going to do to make chicken soup, it's going to be so easy. I'm going to put it in a stock pot, and I'm going to rinse my hands here. And I have a 12-quart stock pot, and I used purified water in it. It's about filled up about halfway. And you really don't have to cut the chicken if you don't want. But what you're doing to make chicken soup is you're taking the substances that are in the chicken and the bones and dispersing them through the water at high heat. And that's what makes the really great tasting broth. You can fill that to where it's just covering the chicken by about that far. And you can see that. That really right there will make chicken soup. Now, there's other ways to make broth. You can add a half an onion to it, add a couple carrots to it, add some celery to it that you chop up, and that will add flavor to the broth. And then what people will do is then strain those vegetables, because they'll be pulverized by the time they boil for quite a while, and they'll strain those vegetables out. Another way to do it is to heat this up and let this boil. You know, you're going to boil that. You're just going to boil that chicken until the chicken is completely cooked. And you'll see some recipes will say boil it for 2 hours, boil it for a whole day, boil the bones forever. You really don't have to do any of that. Just let it boil until it cooks and fully through. And you'll be able to do that just by testing it with a fork. Then take it off and let it cool. And then what we're going to do is come back and we're going to pull the chicken off the bones and throw it back in. And then take the bigger bones that are easy to pick out and throw it in and boil it longer. And at that time, I'm going to add a couple carrots, a couple pieces of celery, maybe 3, and an onion, probably half an onion. And there's really no wrong way to do it, because if your broth didn't have quite enough taste in it, you just boil down some of the water and it'll make it a lot less watery and have much more taste. Or vice versa, if it had a lot of taste, you could just add a little water. But basically what chicken soup is that chicken boiled in water with salt added to taste till it tastes, you know, just perfect. And so that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to turn that on and boil it, and I'll come back and let you see that. Okay, I wanted to touch on a couple things while that's boiling. Actually, the pot that I use is an enamel coated pot, because I really don't want to get any metals or anything that would come off of the metals in a soup. So I just take extra precautions. I prefer to have enamel. There's actually studies that will show that it is possible to raise the amount of metals in water. I don't, you know, you can't be perfect, like I said. So, you know, you do the best you can, but that's the pot I prefer to use. And so that's going to boil. And while we're doing that, after a bit, we'll add salt to it. But the great thing about this soup is once it's made, the reason why I'm making so much, you wouldn't have to make that much. You could use a quarter of the chicken and make it just for yourself for that evening. But what I do is I'm going to fill up containers this size and freeze them. And then when you get done and they're frozen, you can make this soup, as I'm going to show you with the other ingredients. You can make it in about 5 minutes. You come home, you grab one of the containers out of the freezer, heat it up in the pan, and add the other ingredients. It's the most incredible chicken soup you've ever had, and so I'm going to show you how to do that. But first we have to have the chicken stock made. And so while that's boiling, I'm going to clean some vegetables, and I already did with the carrot. And I just want to show you a trick. You know, there's always carrot peelers that you can use, but if you don't have anything like that, and this is one of your first times, you can take basically a steak knife and just scrape the carrot. And you see it gets any dirt that's on there off. Turn on the faucet and you can see that's about done. Trim off the little end there and the same on the other end. And so I'm going to take this knife, and you want to wash it really well, you know, after you cut the chicken. I'm going to take these pieces of celery. Now, like I said, you could put the celery into the broth now and strain it out. Now, you can try that over time. I washed the cutting board already. It wouldn't really matter anyway. It's going to go in boiling water with the chicken, so that's not an issue. And then we want to take the carrots and slice them up. Now, all the other vegetables that are in this actual recipe, that's really incredible, including tomatoes, onions, avocado. It's really amazing. But they're things that you can stick in right when you heat the soup up. But carrots take a little bit longer to cook, and onions give the broth a ton of flavor and take a little bit longer. So we'll want to have that ready to go, and then we'll start with a half an onion. You want to really be careful when you're cutting. If you haven't spent a lot of time in the kitchen, just go slow, like you're learning to drive. It's not hard to make anything, but you know, it's like learning to write with a pencil. You want to have a sure hand on that knife and not put yourself in any danger whatsoever. So what I do is slice that onion across ways and then just turn it and slice it the other way, and you're done. Now what we're going to do is, after this boils for a while, that's ready to go way ahead of time. And after this boils, then we're going to take this off of the stove, and we're going to set it aside, let it cool, and then we're going to take all the chicken off the bones and put it back into the pot. Throw these pieces in there, let it boil a little while, put the salt, we're done. So that's your chicken broth. And then I'm going to show you the second part to this soup that, you know, you can always eat it like that and have a normal chicken soup. You could add rice to it, you could add noodles to it. But what I'm going to show you is incredible. And then I'm also going to show you, again, how to come home from work and have this made in 5 minutes. And so it's a really easy meal. If you've never made this, do it. You're going to love it. And we'll be back after a little while after that's boiled and that chicken's ready to take off. Okay, now once you get this to a boil, you want to back the heat off a little bit so it just simmers. And then you also want to add about 4 to 5 tablespoons of salt. I use real salt. I like to get the closest to sea salt or any other salt that's a really natural salt as possible. And real salt, ancient fine sea salt. So that's a good salt. And you let it simmer for about 25 minutes. It doesn't really matter. You're just going to boil it so the chicken gets done. And then you take it off and let it cool. So I'm going to need my handy dandy gloves. You could boil it for 20 minutes and just turn the heat off and leave it sit on the same burner. Wouldn't matter, but I'll take it off. Now the idea is to let that cool enough so that you can take the chicken pieces out and pull the chicken off from the bones completely, and we'll keep the bigger bones and put back in, and also the chicken back in for a little bit longer to simmer, and you'll add the vegetables. You don't have to put the bones back in, but it will add to the taste to it. So you can just put the meat back in and then put your vegetables in, but I'm going to show you that. But it's going to take a little bit to cool, so let's get that done first. And you will notice that I haven't even knocked a vegetable on the floor yet. So don't want to spoil that record. So I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, the chicken's been set aside here for just a few minutes to make the boiling stop, and you can see what that looks like. And what I've decided to do to hurry it up, you can do this anytime. You can leave it sit and go about your business, you know, when you're making broth, and come back later. Or in the same way, you can take, I had this fruit bowl, but if you don't have a fruit bowl, you can use a pan, a frying pan. But I'm going to take the chicken out and let it sit in there, and it'll cool faster. And that way I can come back. Now you want to be careful, don't drop that into the hot liquid and splash it on yourself. You always want to be careful. But once that's out, you can just let that sit until it cools. Turn it over if you need. Look at that. And the broth, you know, the broth doesn't matter if it cools down that much. You mainly just want to get the chicken off the bones, and so you can put it back in and make the rest of your soup. So we'll be back when that's cool enough. It's not there yet. You don't want to put your hands in that, but it'll happen a lot faster if you take it out of the broth. Okay, it's been about 15 minutes, and this chicken has cooled down. So I'm going to start pulling the chicken off the bones. And actually, before I do get my hands all messy, now's a good time to actually test the salt level in your broth. And if it's not quite salty enough for you, you can put a little bit more in. That's just about perfect. So what I'm going to do now is start to pull the chicken without making a big old mess. You don't want to do that. There's times I said you did, but with chicken, you're going to be cleaning up for a little bit. But you just really want to clean it off and just go through the chicken and separate the bones. And when you hit a bigger bone like that, it'll be really easy to get out. You can just put that in. You know, you want to make this as simple as possible. Really, the soup, what it is it's a boiled chicken in water with some salt in it. That's soup. And that's the part that takes the longest. But once it's done, you can get creative about the things you add to it. You know, traditionally you have onion, carrot, and celery, and noodles or rice. But when we make a big batch like this, we're going to want to freeze it. And when we take it out of the freezer, you don't really want a lot of things that won't be as good when they're frozen. You can use a judgment call, and you know, if you don't like some of the consistencies of the vegetables, they should be awesome still, but if you don't like them when they're frozen, you can always put it in when you heat your soup up later when you take it out. But when you have a bunch of containers already made of soup that is frozen, you can just take it out, throw it in a pan, heat it up. Once it's hot, you're going to throw in your onions, and I'm going to show you a special recipe that's actually really good. This should take about 5 minutes if you're concentrating. And you can pull this off quickly. Just separate the skin out. Now, some people will boil this for way longer, like a whole day. Or not a whole day, but I've seen it 2 to 24 hours boiling soup. But that's really bone broth. You can make this in an hour, hour and a half. You'll be good. That broth already tastes great, and that only boiled for a half an hour. There, now that took about 7 minutes probably. If it was any longer than that, because I might have not been concentrating, but it didn't take too much concentration to keep clean. Now, I'm not bragging about keeping clean because I know what happens. Pride before downfall. I'm not. Okay. So, and that didn't do it, did it right there? No. Okay, so those veggies are in. So now we're gonna put it back over. But there's enough broth in that level of soup, really, to put a little more veggies. These carrots will just take a little bit longer to cook than maybe celery or tomatoes will. So I put them in now. Now what we're going to do is just, we don't want to go overboard. You probably had soup a lot of times when the carrots are completely mushy, but you just heat this up for a little while. Boil it for probably 5 minutes. And that is going to be done. Then we're going to let it cool down and put it in containers and freeze it. And your soup is done just like that. Then I have this special treat I want to show you how to make a soup like you won't believe from the chicken stock. It's basically chicken stock with a few other veggies in there. But you're not going to believe this, so you'll have to see it. Come back in a little bit and I'll show you. Okay, that soup now has been boiling with those vegetables in it for about 5 minutes. And really, that is enough because it's going to sit in there a little bit when after I turn it off. So now is when you would add noodles, or you would add rice or any type of thing that you want to put in it. But now's the time to see an amazing soup that you got to try. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut some onion and dice it. And then we're going to grab a tomato that's been cleaned, and I'm cutting it in slices. Then I turn it sideways and do slices crossway and turn it just so I dice the tomato. Okay, so now we have onions, tomatoes. You take a bunch of cilantro, I grab them, twist it off, rinse, and dice it. Okay, now we go to the soup. And really, it's already hot, so I was going to put it in a bowl. But really, if you're out of the freezer or it's not boiling yet, what you want to do is you want to take some and put in a bowl. And I actually just got a bone with it, but that doesn't matter. I'll just take it out. You get the soup that you want in there. We're going to heat this up, and once it's hot, we're going to let it boil. We're going to take these items, the onions and the tomato, and put it in now. And it's going to boil for about a minute or to 2. And then the next thing we're going to do is cut an avocado and be ready with a spoon. And what I do is I just dice out the pieces like that and put that in. Okay, now it's been boiling for about a minute and a half. Just stir those tomatoes a little bit. And this is going to be a really interesting soup. You're going to love it. At that point, right around that point, those tomatoes will completely boil down. We take our cilantro now, take it off the heat and throw it in the top, stir it. And you can use a little bit or you can use a lot, but it's just going to melt the cilantro down. Then we take our avocado and dice pieces on top. And you can cut it. I found this a really easy way. You just scoop, scoop, scoop right around it. Stir it. So now we dish this up. And you'll notice I didn't put anything spicy in there at all, but I do either take a jalapeno or serrano pepper, whichever one's going to be spicy that day. Sometimes in the grocery store you can't get a spicy one. And I'll slice a few pieces and just put it on the edge. And, I'll eat a little bit depending. You can put it in the soup, but I don't like it that spicy. And there you have it. And that soup is incredible. If you've never tried it, add in the tomato and the onion, cilantro, avocado, you're going to be blown away. It's a great variation on chicken soup. Now, we have chicken soup right there, or excuse me, that has the cilantro. We have our chicken soup right here, and what we're going to do is let that cool down and then put it in containers and freeze it. And that way, once it's frozen, you can come home, take out your chicken soup, your frozen chicken soup, pour it in here, heat it up to a boil, and throw those vegetables in there. You can also add a whole clove of garlic at the same time that you put the onion in, 1 or 2 or 3, and that garlic will be completely cooked just as fast as the onions are. And so now, the payoff. Now let me tell you something. That will be the best chicken soup you will have ever had. It'll be different. You want to salt to taste, but it's so good. And you can now take that chicken stock and add rice to it, add noodles to it, add other vegetables to it, or try that. And I'm telling you, you'll do that once, you'll do it twice. So hit like and subscribe down below. You can see how easy this is to make for yourself. The key is to have it done and made. I'm going to put this into the containers, freeze them, and I'll come home and 5 minutes, you have soup made. It's incredible. Try it. You're going to love it. I'll see you next time. Now, I had told you that I was going to show you how to make chicken soup the easy way and the easier way. And that's the easy way. You just freeze it and take it out. When you're ready to eat it, heat it up, and you're good. But if you have a Whole Foods close to you, they make the chicken soup in the same way in their kitchen, already made. Now, regular grocery stores are not going to have chicken broth and chicken soup, homemade chicken soup made like that. But Whole Foods does it, and you may be able to find somewhere else that does it. For you guys out there that don't want to go so far as to make the soup, you can run and get one of these and start it from that. Pour it into the pan, and then add the extra ingredients, the tomato, the onion, the cilantro, and the avocado. And you'll have that done in about 5 minutes. Not everybody has it, but it is a tip. It's the easier way, but the easy way has no comparison. Either way, you're going to love it, enjoy it, and I'll see you soon.